Few know the true depth of Edgar Cayce's visions. He was not just an ordinary medium, but a man who, in a trance, accessed a kind of spiritual library that held the history of the human soul. This mystical collection, which he called the Akashic records, contained secret details about Jesus, his lineage, and his true spiritual origin. Cayce claimed that everything was written there, not by human hands, but by vibrations of the soul. By connecting with this source, he brought to light a mystery that had been kept for centuries, a mystery that involves not only Jesus, but also his Father. In several of his readings, Cayce spoke of Jesus as an evolved spirit, a being who had lived before in other bodies. But he also asserted that Jesus coming into the world did not happen as the Gospels tell it. According to him, there was a cosmic intervention, a much higher plane than any dogmatic narrative could explain. Jesus was the incarnation of a higher energy, and Cayce knew that this revelation could shake the foundations of faith. Therefore, his words were met with silence or disbelief by many. But now, a century later, the world finally seems ready to listen. Most impressively, Cayce never sought to form a religion. He didn't seek temples, pulpits, or followers, only the truth. In his sessions, he would lie down, close his eyes, and, unaware of his own words, plunge into profound visions. In these visions, he saw not only the future, but past lives, interplanetary energies, and higher consciousnesses in action. It was in this state that he accessed information about the birth of Jesus. And there, he revealed something that remains shocking to many to this day. Jesus' father was not who tradition claims. Before we move on, we want to feel the power of your presence. Comment below. From which city, state, or country are you watching us? Let's map this current of light and show how far our message is reaching. Write in the comments and let's expand this energy together. He reported that Jesus' soul was shaped outside of ordinary time. Cayce claimed there was a spiritual council, a hierarchy of elevated beings who precisely prepared the coming of such a great soul. And this involved a spiritual father who was not God in the form we know, nor a physical being. He was a force of pure intelligence that united with Mary's womb in a way never before understood by science. Jesus' essence was sent, not created like other souls. This revelation changes everything we know about his origin. The people of that time were not ready. The church, fearing the loss of its dominance, did not make space for these records. Cayce's name, though recognized among spiritualists and occult scholars, was kept far from pulpits and theological seminaries. But like all truth, this one also found a way to cross generations. The archive survived, the recordings were preserved, and today we can revisit these messages with new eyes. Cayce wasn't trying to prove anything. He simply showed what he saw. What he saw was that Jesus' story begins before Earth. A soul who participated in the creation of worlds, who walked among the Atlanteans, who descended to the Egyptians, and who, finally, incarnated among us. And in this incarnation, the body was generated by a force that has no human name. This is the essence of the secret Cayce revealed, and which we are now ready to understand. The journey begins here, with the courage to face the invisible and an open heart for what comes next. The traditional version of Jesus' birth, taught for centuries, presents a divine conception through the Holy Spirit. However, Cayce proposed something bolder, a truth that official history has suppressed. According to him, spiritual records show that Jesus' coming was orchestrated by higher intelligences, but with details deliberately hidden from the sacred texts. It was not simply a miraculous conception, but rather a cosmic, interdimensional event. And the question that lingers is, why hide it? During the first centuries of Christianity, many Gospels were banned, edited, or destroyed. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD and other ecclesiastical meetings decided what would be considered acceptable. Reincarnation was removed. Jesus' connections to previous civilizations were erased. And most importantly, the true nature of his spiritual origin was rewritten. Cayce wasn't the only one to realize this, but he was the most accurate in describing what really happened. For him, Jesus' story is much bigger than what we've been taught. The figure of Mary remains sacred in Cayce's revelations, but the conception she experienced was a phenomenon that defied the laws of ordinary biology. It was not a sexual act, nor a natural gestation. It was as if Mary had been enveloped by a pure energy, a conscious divine intelligence which activated within her the gestation of the Christ-like being. This event was described by Cayce as something already planned for millennia. It was not improvised, but part of a higher plan, and this completely changes the way we view the biblical narrative. Cayce said that the truth about Jesus' birth was softened to better fit the beliefs of the time. The people were not ready to accept an energetic conception, and ancient religious leaders knew they would lose control if they revealed the full truth. So they preferred to create a symbolic, more palatable version where God acts as a father in the human sense, and Joseph assumes the protective role. But the story behind the story remained alive in the subtle planes, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Understanding this does not diminish Jesus. On the contrary, it further magnifies his mission and essence. He is not just an envoy, he is the meeting point between the material and spiritual planes. His coming into the world is a bridge built by the hands of divine consciousness itself. Jesus' true Father, according to Cayce, is a nameless, faceless force, but with a presence that shapes universes. Revealing this does not deny the miracle, but rather amplifies it, and it places us before a new spiritual calling. This historical error, therefore, was not just an omission, it was a choice to preserve human power at the cost of divine truth. But now, as we revisit these revelations, we have the chance to retrace that path, to look at Jesus with new eyes, and to understand that his birth was not just an act of faith, but a cosmic event. This is the second key to understanding the centuries-old secret revealed by Cayce, and the veil we are now beginning to lift. According to Cayce, Jesus' true Father was not a being with human form, nor an entity perched on a heavenly throne. He was something much more vast, a cosmic consciousness, an intelligence that transcends the boundaries of space and time. This energy not only generated Jesus, but also shaped him on other planes, even before his incarnation. Cayce describes this being as an original spark vibrating in tune with the source of all creation. He is not a paternal figure with human traits, but a conscious field of pure light and purpose. It is a revelation that redefines the concept of spiritual fatherhood. This consciousness did not need a physical body to act. It manifested in Mary as a vibrational frequency that reorganized her matter and activated a divine gestation. Cayce saw this as a phenomenon similar to what we now call energetic coding, a fusion between the divine and the material. Mary was chosen because she already carried within her soul an eons-long spiritual preparation. She not only accepted this mission, she was destined for it. But the agent of this conception was a being who had never set foot in the physical world as we know it. Cayce explained that this Heavenly Father was an entity who worked with laws that transcended the dimensions of matter. His language was vibration, and his vehicle was light. This being is not limited to a name, religion, or culture. He is the essence of all that is pure, true, and eternal. By incarnating Jesus, this consciousness knew he would need to live as a human, feel as a human, but carry the memory of his higher origin. And this internal conflict is what would make his mission even more powerful and transformative for humanity. The presence of this cosmic father was so intense that Jesus, even in his childhood, demonstrated wisdom beyond his years. He spoke profoundly, understood spiritual mysteries, and had a direct connection with invisible planes. This wasn't just because he was a son of God in the symbolic sense, but because his essence came from this living, conscious, and present source. Cayce said that this divine energy remained active throughout Jesus' life, silently guiding his steps and decisions. It was like an inner voice, impossible to ignore. This vision radically changes the way we understand the figure of God. He ceases to be an external masculine entity and becomes a living consciousness that inhabits the whole. Jesus was the purest expression of this consciousness. He not only came in God's name, he came with God's vibrational structure within him. According to Cayce, this is true spiritual fatherhood, not the act of physically generating, but of programming the divine essence. The body was born of Mary, but the soul was sent, shaped, and nourished by a cosmic source. This is where faith meets spiritual science, where the miracle of life meets the mystery of origin. The conception of Jesus, according to Cayce, was an act of pure divine intelligence, a plan devised in silence, operated by an invisible but eternally present consciousness. By understanding who this true Father was, we begin to understand who Jesus truly was, and perhaps who we too are, as particles of that same light. Cayce didn't see Jesus as a soul created from nothing to fulfill a mission. To him, Jesus was an ancient spirit, a being who had incarnated many times before being born as the Messiah. In his visions, Cayce mentioned past lives that included figures such as Enoch, Melchizedek, and even an anonymous master from Atlantis. Each of these existences was part of a carefully crafted spiritual journey, and behind this trajectory, there was always a force guiding his steps, the cosmic Father, who prepared him for his final destiny. Jesus didn't come ready-made, he was sculpted life after life. In each incarnation, this soul underwent profound learning. Cayce said that these previous lives were not mistakes, but phases of a great process of spiritual refinement. Jesus' soul carried within itself the memory of human suffering, of the fall and of overcoming it. This enabled him to connect with all human pain, with all sins, without becoming corrupted. The Heavenly Father not only permitted these experiences, he oversaw them, ensuring that the soul maintained its connection to the source. This is what made Jesus such a pure channel of divine will. This revelation shatters the idea that Jesus appeared out of nowhere ready to perform miracles. On the contrary, he was prepared with extreme spiritual precision. In each life, he left seeds of wisdom and love. In each civilization, his presence represented an advancement in the level of collective consciousness. Cayce asserted that, before being born in Bethlehem, Jesus' soul was already known in the spiritual realms as the Christ, or the Anointed One. His birth was merely the final materialization of an eternal plan. This plan involved such intense refinement that it even required periods of cosmic silence. Between lives, Jesus' soul underwent energetic realignments on the higher planes. It wasn't just rest, it was training. In this space between lives, the spiritual father instructed him directly, far from the density of matter. It was as if the soul were reprogrammed to receive new instructions and expand its mission. This process is described by Cayce as the return to the Father's house before descending again to earth. This perspective makes Jesus' mission even more grand. He was not chosen by chance, nor was it a divine improvisation. He was the culmination of a plan that began millennia ago, spanning eras, continents, and civilizations. Cayce shows that each previous incarnation was a painful and necessary preparation, and the true Father, this invisible cosmic being, was present at every stage, shaping, guiding, and inspiring. The birth in Bethlehem was just the final chapter in a much older story. If we accept this vision, then we understand that Jesus did not come merely to save, he came to remember, to remind humanity of its divine origin, its connection to the whole, its dormant potential. And the Father who begot him is not outside, distant, but within, waiting for each of us to recognize that same divine spark. Jesus' journey also mirrors our own, and it is Cayce who gives us this key, forgotten for over 100 years. In the traditional narrative, Joseph is presented as Jesus' earthly father, a righteous man chosen by God to be the Messiah's protector. However, according to Cayce, Joseph's mission was much more symbolic than biological. He was not the creator of Jesus' essence, but the guardian of the body that would house a divine soul. Cayce emphasizes that Jesus' birth involved cosmic forces, and that Joseph accepted his role with humility and obedience to divine will. His presence was essential, but not as a progenitor, but rather as a pillar of spiritual and physical protection. A man who silently understood the enormity of what was happening. Joseph knew deep down that there was something greater behind Mary's pregnancy. The mystical experience she experienced was unusual, and he was guided by dreams and spiritual signs. Cayce reveals that these dreams were direct manifestations from a higher plane, coded messages sent by Jesus' spiritual father. Joseph didn't question them, he embraced them. His faith transformed him into more than a carpenter. He became an instrument of the divine plan, and this makes him worthy of admiration, even though his role was different from fatherhood as we know it. Cayce describes Joseph as someone spiritually prepared for this mission. He had in previous lives developed virtues of balance, patience, and discernment. His union with Mary was not random, but the result of a previously aligned meeting of souls on higher planes. When Jesus was born, Joseph saw not just a child, he saw a living light among men. He understood that this soul did not belong to him, but that it was his responsibility to protect it from the dangers of the physical world. This awareness made him special, even if his name was forgotten over time. Unlike traditional messianic figures, Joseph lived in anonymity and silence. He sought neither glory nor recognition. His mission was behind the scenes, but fundamental. Cayce describes this kind of dedication as one of the greatest acts of spiritual love, serving without seeking exaltation. While many wondered who Jesus' father was, Joseph stood firm, knowing that his fatherhood was of a different order. He did not father the soul, but cared for the body the soul inhabited. And this is greater than any earthly title. This revelation changes the way we view Jesus' family. It is not a common structure, but a spiritual formation coordinated by higher intelligences. Mary, the chosen one. Joseph, the guardian. Jesus, the living spark of the cosmic Father. When we understand these roles deeply, we realize that all were equally important, albeit in different dimensions. Spiritual fatherhood transcends blood. It manifests itself in responsibility, love, and a sense of mission. Cayce invites us to look at this ancient story with new eyes. Joseph teaches us that being a father isn't always about giving birth. Sometimes it's about embracing what the universe entrusts to you. He protected the light amidst the darkness, guided by dreams that came from a higher plane. And even without understanding everything, he remained steadfast, silent, and present. Jesus' true father, as Cayce reveals, was cosmic, but he needed a guardian on earth. And that was Joseph, the man who held the invisible with the hands of his heart. Among Cayce's most impactful revelations is the assertion that Jesus did not possess ordinary DNA. His essence was vibrational, his spiritual constitution unlike that of any other human being. He did not come from earth, he was sent to earth. According to Cayce, Jesus' body was formed from an energetic fusion between the divine plane and Mary's womb. This fusion created a physical structure compatible with the Christic vibration, something scientists would never be able to detect using conventional methods. It was, literally, a body of light adapted to matter. For Cayce, Jesus' birth was a spiritual engineering operation. There was no genetic intervention in the earthly sense, but rather an energetic encoding. The cosmic Father's vibrational field reconfigured Mary's womb, activating a matrix that transcends ordinary biology. This explains why Jesus, even as a child, demonstrated wisdom, empathy, and unusual powers. He was in a human body, but not limited by it. His spiritual DNA was composed of high frequencies, a code of celestial origin. This perspective also explains why Jesus could heal with his hands, calm storms, multiply food, and raise the dead. His body was merely a temporary garment. What operated was his direct connection to the source. Cayce asserted that Jesus had constant, conscious access to the universal energy field, the same field that created the worlds. This connection made him not only a prophet, but a living portal between heaven and earth. And all of this was possible because his origin was not material but vibrational. Even moments of pain and suffering were experienced by him with total spiritual presence. His body bled, but his consciousness remained awake. Cayce said that Jesus never forgot who he was, not even for a second. This set him apart from all the other teachers who walked the earth. He didn't just teach love, he was love incarnate. And this incarnation was only possible because his constitution was molded of light, not ordinary flesh. A light that no microscope can capture, but which touches the soul of those who listen to him with an open heart. This understanding also brings a profound calling to all of us. If Jesus came with this DNA of light, it's because this same potential exists in every human being. Perhaps dormant, perhaps distorted by the pains of the world, but still present. Cayce told us that Jesus came not only to save, but to awaken this divine spark within us. The DNA of light is a symbol of our true spiritual origin, and Jesus was the first to fully manifest it among humanity. Cayce's revelation takes us out of the realm of blind faith and leads us into the mystery of spiritual science. We are not faced with a myth, but with a plan devised by the hands of infinity. Jesus' body was a temple built of pure vibrations, and his birth is proof that the impossible is only what is not understood. By accepting that Jesus did not come from earth, we open the space to recognize that we do not belong solely to it either. We are children of the same light, and it calls us. Why did such powerful knowledge remain hidden for so long? Cayce revealed these truths between 1910 and 1940, but his words were ignored, discredited, or silenced. At that time, humanity was still embroiled in wars, fear, and rigid religiosity. The world was not ready to accept that the true father of Jesus was not a white-bearded being in the sky, but a living cosmic consciousness. What Cayce brought was too revolutionary for a society stuck in dogma. So the secret was buried, not for lack of evidence, but for fear of the truth. Many of Cayce's records were preserved by his family and faithful scholars, but much of his messages were kept from the public. His archives on Jesus, reincarnation, and spiritual fatherhood were restricted to esoteric and spiritualist circles. The mainstream media, traditional churches, and universities preferred silence. After all, accepting Cayce would call into question everything, from the Bible to the very power structure of religious institutions, and few were willing to sacrifice their comfort for the sake of the truth. Cayce didn't seek fame. His readings were done lying down, in a trance, unconscious of what he was saying. When he awoke, not even he knew the exact words he had transmitted, but the records were recorded, preserved, and today they can be revisited. It's as if a spiritual time capsule is being opened before our eyes, and the contents within are explosive. Jesus came from another origin, with a universal mission, and his true father is beyond any dogma. For these 100 years, silent spirituality has kept this flame alive. Small groups of seekers, scholars, and mediums have studied Cayce in secret, with reverence. They knew that one day the time would come to reveal all, and that time is now. The world is in crisis, and this crisis demands a new level of consciousness. Returning to the truth about Jesus is also a return to our own divine essence. It is not just a discovery about the past. It is a call to the future. Cayce knew the time of revelation would come. That's why he documented everything in detail. Names, dates, visions, exact words. His messages were so specific that even the most skeptical today find it difficult to dismiss them. We are faced with a spiritual map drawn by someone who saw beyond time. And on this map, the birth of Jesus is not a myth. It is an event programmed with mathematical precision by the universe. The secret was hidden not by chance, but because it required spiritual maturity to be understood. Now that this secret has come to light, it can no longer be ignored. Jesus' Father, as Cayce revealed, is not who we were taught. He is a field of light, a living source that dwells within us all. This revelation is not against faith, but an update of faith. It invites us to expand our vision, abandon labels, and look at the divine with deeper eyes. 100 years later, we are finally ready to hear what Cayce whispered to the world and missed. Cayce's revelation about Jesus' true father is not merely a theological curiosity. It has the power to transform the entire foundation of modern faith. If Jesus was generated by a cosmic consciousness, if his origin is vibrational rather than biological, then religion needs to be re-examined. Faith can no longer be a matter of fear, blind obedience, or tradition. It must become a path of expanded consciousness. Cayce does not destroy faith. He renews it. And he invites us to leave the temple of stone and enter the temple of the Spirit. Many feel lost in the face of so many religions, doctrines, and interpretations. But Cayce offers something simple and profound. Christ does not belong to a religion. He is a state of consciousness. Jesus' fatherhood does not distance him from us. On the contrary, it brings us closer. Because if he was generated by a cosmic force, then that same force also generated us. This makes us all spiritual brothers connected by the same light. The impact of this is liberating. We no longer need to seek outside ourselves what already vibrates within. This understanding also brings healing to the wounds of faith. How many have turned away from God because they couldn't accept the imposed dogmas? How many live in guilt, fear, or a sense of inferiority? Cayce shows us that God is not a judge, but a source that generates consciousness in love. And Jesus was the purest expression of this source. Knowing that he came from a higher plane doesn't make him distant. It makes his mission even more powerful. He descended to us fully aware of what we were, and loved us anyway. The impact of these revelations also affects how we relate to the world. When we understand that we are made of the same substance that created Jesus, we begin to treat others with more empathy. Spirituality ceases to be an escape and becomes a commitment to the light that dwells within all beings. Cayce believed this was the true gospel, the awakening of inner divinity, and recognizing the cosmic Father as the origin of all things leads us directly to this awakening. Many will resist these ideas, and naturally so. Religious structures fear losing control, but Cayce knew that truth, once revealed, cannot be unseen. Modern faith must choose between continuing to repeat the past or opening itself to the revelation of the Spirit. It's not about abandoning faith, but purifying it. And this purification involves understanding that Jesus' true Father is the same one who lives within each of us. A Father who doesn't punish, who guides. This is the great shift Cayce proposes. We are not facing a new dogma, but a new horizon. Jesus did not come to found a religion but to reconnect us to the source. And now, 100 years later, this call resurfaces with greater force. The impact of this truth will not only be felt in churches, but in the souls they awaken. The faith of the future is consciousness, and this consciousness begins with the courage to ask, what if the true Father of Jesus has always been within me? We've reached the end of this revelation, but perhaps it's just the beginning of something much greater within you. Edgar Cayce gave us a hidden map, and today, with courage, you've walked every trail of this spiritual path. Now you know, Jesus' true Father was not earthly, but a living force that also pulses within every conscious being. This truth doesn't require you to abandon faith. It invites you to transcend it. And perhaps for the first time, you'll feel that something inside you has always known this. But what about you? Are you ready to revisit everything you've been taught about God, Jesus, and life itself? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. We want to know how this truth resonated with you. And if this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next spiritual revelations that can change your life. Together, we are just beginning to awaken.